Good afternoon, everyone. Today we will discuss about cardiac output. So first we will see the definition of cardiac output. It is the amount of blood ejected by each ventricle per minute, or the amount of blood pumped out by each ventricle into the circulation per minute is called cardiac output. So it is defined as cardiac output is equal to stroke volume multiplied by heart rate. Okay. So SV is stroke volume and HR is heart rate. So what is stroke volume? Stroke volume is the amount of blood pumped by each ventricle per beat. Okay. So stroke volume is amount of blood pumped by each ventricle per minute, and cardiac output is amount of blood ejected by each ventricle per minute. Okay, so stroke volume is per beat and cardiac output is per minute. So cardiac output is equal to, if we take this formula into calculation, that is 80 multiplied by 70 is equal to 5.6 liters per minute. Okay, so this is the normal cardiac output. So the cardiac output by each ventricle is 5 to 6 liters per minute, and it is same for both the ventricles. So each ventricle pumps 5 to 6 liters of blood into the circulation per minute. So this is made possible because the two ventricles are connected in series. So what is the significance of this cardiac output? So it is the cardiac output that decides the rate of blood flow to the different parts of the body. Okay, so how much amount of blood should be flowed to different parts or organs of the body, it is decided by the cardiac output. So if there is decrease in cardiac output, there will be decrease in blood flow to the all organs or the systems of the body.
System is to maintain ample blood flow to all body tissues to deliver nutrients and other necessary molecules to the tissue. This system also clears the waste products from cells. The heart works in juxtaposition with the cardiovascular centers and peripheral blood vessels to achieve these goals. The pumping of the heart causes specific volume of blood to be pumped into the aorta every minute. This blood flows throughout the circulation and returns to the heart by systemic veins. The volume of blood pumped out by each ventricle per minute is known as cardiac output, and the return of blood to the heart is termed as venous return. Cardiac output usually depends on two variables, stroke volume and heart rate. Stroke volume is the volume of blood driven out by each ventricle in each beat. Heart rate is the number of heartbeats per minute. The cardiac output is calculated by multiplying the stroke volume and heart rate. In humans, the cardiac output is about 5 liters per minute in the resting state.
So in the video, you have seen about the cardiac output and venous return. So both are same. Why? Because the cardiac output is the amount of blood ejected by each ventricle per minute, and venous return is the quantity of blood returned from all over the body through the veins into the right atrium each minute. Okay, so the same will be in reverse manner will be called the venous return. So the amount which is supplied by heart to the whole body, the same amount of blood will be returned to heart, that is especially right atrium, through the veins. So cardiac output is equal to venous return. So if we draw a graph like this, cardiac output on y-axis and x-axis right atrial pressure or mean systemic filling pressure. So if we draw the graph, this is the cardiac output curve and this will be the venous return curve. So both are meeting exactly at 5 liters. Okay, so that means cardiac output is equal to venous return. And coming to the components of the cardiac output, so we have seen that cardiac output is equal to heart rate into stroke volume. So stroke volume, as I have already told you, it is the amount of blood pumped by each ventricle per beat or per contraction of the heart, and it is almost equal to 80 ml. So this stroke volume depends on end diastolic volume and contractility or end systolic volume of the heart. Okay, so what is end diastolic volume and what is end systolic or contractility means? So if we take, see in this picture, heart rate into stroke volume, and SV is equal to EDV minus ESV. Okay, so end diastolic volume is nothing but the amount of volume or the amount of blood which is remained in the heart after the completion of diastole. So diastole means relaxation, that is filling of the heart. So that is equal to venous return. So venous return will be filling the heart, right? Okay, so from all the veins of the body, the amount of blood which is returned to the heart into the right atrium and into the ventricles. So that is end diastolic volume. That is otherwise called preload or venous return, or it represents the distensibility of the heart. Okay, so these words you should remember, or if you understand a concept, then these words will be will become familiar, and you will be able to easily understand the meaning. And then end systolic volume. So this is also, it represents the afterload or contractility. So after the completion of systole, so the amount of blood or the volume of blood which is remaining in the heart after the completion of systole is called end systolic volume. So it represents afterload or contractility of the heart. So preload is the dominant regulator of cardiac output in normal cardiovascular system, but afterload dominates flow regulation when myocardium is failing. Okay, so in the normal CVS or the normal heart without any problem, the preload will be the dominant regulator of cardiac output. But when the myocardium, that is when heart is failing, the main determinant is afterload or the contractility. That is how much efficiently the heart is able to contract. That will determine the cardiac output in the failing heart. Otherwise, the main determinant is preload. Okay. So the other component of cardiac output is heart rate. Under normal circumstances, the heart beats at the rate of 70 times per minute. Increase in heart rate increases cardiac output, but this is only up to a limit. And after that limit, it decreases due to decrease in cardiac filling. Okay, so in this picture, if you can see, the red line is a normal heart rate, and green dotted lines are the increased heart rate. So next we will see about cardiac index. So it is represented as cardiac index is equal to cardiac output divided by body surface area. So cardiac output, which is the amount of blood pumped out by each ventricle per minute per square meter of the body surface area. Okay, so the amount of blood pumped out per ventricle per minute per square meter of body surface area is nothing but the cardiac index. It is expressed in relation to body surface area. Okay, so the normal value is 3.2 liters per minute per meter square, because the cardiac output is 5 to 6 liters per minute and person's body surface area. So the cardiac index varies per individual to individual. So the normal value is 3.2 liters per minute per meter square. The next is cardiac reserve. It is the maximum increase in cardiac output above the normal value. Okay, so above the normal value of cardiac output, whatever the amount of blood present more is called cardiac reserve. It is expressed in percentage. So the normal values for adults is 300 to 400%, old age 200 to 250%, and athletics it is more, 500 to 600% of cardiac reserve will be present in athletes. And the variations of cardiac reserve are maximum in heavy exercise and minimum in cardiac diseases. Next, coming to the most important topic for today, that is regulation of cardiac output. Till now we have seen just the introduction part, that is the definitions and the components. So now we will see the regulation. So as we all know that cardiac output is equal to stroke volume multiplied by heart rate. So the main factors controlling are venous return, because stroke volume depends on venous return, and myocardial contractility, which is again related to heart rate. So myocardial contractility, so again it depends on peripheral resistance and heart rate. So these are the main factors which control the cardiac output. Okay, so this is a flow chart. You can pause at this slide and read this flow chart. So the cardiac output regulated by heart rate and stroke volume mainly, and it is in turn controlled by all these factors. Okay, so we will see one by one now. So these control mechanisms we can divide into two: intrinsic regulation and extrinsic regulation. So intrinsic is otherwise called control of stroke volume, and extrinsic is control of heart rate. So extrinsic is primarily controlled by the cardiac innervation or the centers, cardiovascular centers located in the medulla, that is vasomotor center and cardiac vagal center. So this is less important, but intrinsic, that is the stroke volume, regulation of stroke volume is very important. So this is again divided into two mechanisms. One is heterometric regulation and one is homometric regulation. So this intrinsic or stroke volume control is maintained by all these components, that is respiratory pump, cardiac pump, muscle pump, and the blood volume, sympathetic discharge, body position, and resistance to venous return. So after seeing all these factors which regulate or control the stroke volume, we will see the homometric and heterometric regulation. So what are those and how do they control the cardiac output? So this extrinsic regulation, so these are controlled by sympathetic and parasympathetic activity. So coming to the intrinsic mechanism, so before going into the venous return, that is the respiratory pump, cardiac pump, muscle pump, so we will see first what is the intrinsic heterometric regulatory mechanisms. So why it is called heterometric means hetero is different and metric is measurement. So there is difference in the myocardial contractility with the initial length of the muscle fiber, cardiac muscle fiber. So there is difference. As the length is changing, the contractility is changing. So that's why it is called heterometric regulatory mechanism. So this intrinsic mechanism is based on Frank-Starling's law or Frank-Starling mechanism, which states that within the physiological limits, the force of contraction of cardiac muscle is directly proportional to the initial length of the muscle fiber. Okay. The force of contraction of the cardiac muscle is otherwise called contractility. Okay, it is directly proportional to the initial length of the muscle fiber. That means as the length increases, the contractility increases. But this condition applies only to a limit. There is a physiological limit, because as we go on increasing the length, the heart contractility does not increase, because the cardiac muscle we can't stretch more than a limit. Okay, so the initial length of muscle fiber is decided by the condition of muscle before contraction, which is again affected by the end diastolic volume. Okay, so we have already discussed about this end diastolic volume, which is otherwise called venous return, the amount of blood which remains in the heart after the completion of diastole. So that decides the initial length of the muscle fiber. Okay, so now we will see a video on this Frank-Starling law.
With the Frank-Starling law, which states that as end diastolic volume, also known as preload, increases, so does stroke volume. This is because the more you fill the heart with blood, the more the ventricular walls stretch, and like an elastic or a balloon that is stretched further and further, the heart will contract or snap back to its original shape with more force. Another factor that increases stroke volume is a decrease in afterload. Now back to cardiac output. When our heart can't do this adequately by itself, this is when we use medications. What inotropes do is causes an increase in cardiac output by affecting stroke volume. They cause an increase in cardiac contractility, or inotropy, which in turn causes increases in the ejection fraction, leading to more cardiac output. In simpler words, inotropes cause the heart to slam harder, causing more blood to be pumped out.
Okay, so here we have seen the Frank-Starling law as the heart is stretched more and more, and it will come back to its original position with that much force itself. So when we use the inotropes, that is which increase the heart rate or the contractility, so it causes the heart to beat more harder or more faster, so to pump the blood, more amount of blood from the heart. Okay, so these inotropes are the increasing factors increasing contractility we will see in the coming slides. And the factors affecting the end diastolic volume. So now we will see the various factors which are responsible for the venous return or end diastolic volume. So you have, if you see in this picture, the skeletal muscle pump and the sympathetic stimulation causing venoconstriction and increased venous pressure, which results in increased venous return. And breathing, this is the respiratory pump, causes negative intrathoracic pressure, which is also responsible for venous return. And urine volume, tissue fluid volume, which leads to blood volume, also responsible for venous return. So we will see all these factors one by one now. So the respiratory pump, that is how the thoracic cavity and the lungs are responsible for the normal venous return. So normally intrapleural pressure or thoracic pressure is negative, that is subatmospheric level, and it is -2 mmHg. So during inspiration, what happens? This pressure decreases to -5 mmHg, causing less pressure over larger veins and arteries. So pressure decreases, the diameter of these larger veins will increase. So this increase in diameter of larger veins will also cause the descent of diaphragm and increases the intra-abdominal pressure to squeeze the blood out of the abdomen. Okay, one is increased diameter of the larger veins causing because of decreased pressure, and also descent of diaphragm causes increased intra-abdominal pressure to squeeze the blood out of abdomen. So these two factors will increase the blood flow to the right atrium during inspiration. Okay, so this is how the respiratory pump acts. Okay, one is by decreasing the intrathoracic pressure and also decreasing the pressure in the larger veins and decreasing the descent of the diaphragm so that intra-abdominal pressure increases. So it squeezes out the blood from the out of the abdomen into the veins, larger veins. So that's how the respiratory pump acts to bring the venous return to heart. The next is cardiac pump. So here we have to know about two terminologies. One is vis a tergo and other is vis a fronti. So these two are the Latin words. So first we will see vis a tergo, which means force acting from behind or forward push from behind. Okay. So this forward push from behind is nothing but venous return. So this venous return enters or the blood enters into the heart because of the myocardial contraction during systole. So during systole, the heart has been contracted and the elastic recoil of the arterial wall. So as you all know that arterial wall has a property of this recoil, elastic recoil, which is otherwise called Wind-Kessel effect. So because of the myocardial contraction during systole and elastic recoil of the arterial wall, the blood is being pushed from behind into the heart. So if there is a resistance while the venous return or the blood entering into the heart, if there is resistance because of these arteries, the blood cannot enter into the heart. So because of this elastic recoil, that is with the when the force is coming, blood force with forceful it is coming or entering into the ventricle or into the right atrium. So this elastic recoil is adjusting, the arterial wall is adjusting so that the ventricle or the right atrium will be able to fill with blood. Okay, so this is the forward push from behind, otherwise called vis a tergo. And next is vis a fronti. It is exactly opposite to that. It is a suction force acting from front, which pulls the blood from great veins into the right atrium. Okay, so as the venous return comes from the vena cava, that is the great veins, into the right atrium, the force acting from front, it like a suction. It sucks up the blood which is already present in the larger veins. Okay, so this is ventricular systolic function and ventricular diastolic suction. The next is muscle pump. So the skeletal muscles in the body, especially in the lower limbs, they continuously contract and relax. Okay, with rhythmic contraction of these skeletal muscle, the blood is squeezed out of the blood vessels, that is the veins which are present between the skeletal muscles. The blood will be squeezed and it will be raised up, that is the blood movement will be going towards the heart. Okay, and the rise of pressure forces blood towards the heart out of each segment. Okay, so the valves present in the veins will prevent the backflow of the blood. As the blood is squeezed out, that is towards the heart, it is the flow will be preventing backward by the valves, venous valves. Okay, so with each contraction, the some amount of blood will be moved towards the heart side. And as the muscles relax, the depleted segments, that is the blood will be emptied here, no, in this segment. So it will be refilled from the more peripheral venous channels and also from superficial veins. So via the communicating channels. Okay. So once during contraction, the blood will be squeezed out of the veins, and during relaxation, the blood will be refilled into the depleted part. So that's how this will be acting like a muscle pump. So this will be difficult in varicose veins because there are the veins will be dilated, and the muscle pump, while they are contracting and relaxing, it becomes very difficult for the blood to be squeezed out of the veins towards the heart. So in varicose veins, there will be accumulation of blood in the lower limbs, and that will lead to many more complications. So that you will see in coming years. And next is blood volume. Okay, so the blood volume is determined by the mean circulating filling pressure, that is MCFP, which depends upon the level of blood volume, and mean systemic filling pressure MSFP, which is equilibrated pressure everywhere in the circulation at rest. Okay, so the mean systemic filling pressure is the equilibrated pressure everywhere in circulation at rest. So this influences venous return. So more systemic filling pressure means more venous return. Okay, so the circulating filling pressure depends on blood volume, and the systemic filling pressure depends on venous return. That is, it influences with venous return. As the systemic filling pressure increases, venous return will increase. So as the blood volume is more, it will be increasing the venous return. And also vice versa, as the blood volume is less, venous return decreases. The next is sympathetic discharge or the sympathetic stimulation. How does it affect the venous return or cardiac output? So on sympathetic stimulation, the venous tone increases, and as the veins are already capacitance vessels, they can accommodate a large amount of blood. The circulatory filling pressure increases, which increases the venous return. At normal blood volume, sympathetic stimulation raises the circulating filling pressure from 7 to 17 mmHg, and inhibition of the sympathetic system lowers the filling pressure from 7 to 4 mmHg. So this normal central one is the normal circulatory system, and green one is strong sympathetic stimulation, and complete sympathetic inhibition is this blue one. Okay, so the normal volume is here. Mean circulatory filling pressure of around 7, and the volume is around 4.5 ml. And standing body position, how does it affect the venous return? So on prolonged standing, there will be more venous pooling in the lower limbs, which really decreases the venous return. Okay, so as you can see in this picture, on prolonged standing, the blood will be accumulated in the lower limb, so it will not be pumped towards the heart, so that will be decreasing the venous return. And resistance to venous return. So resistance means as the blood enters the heart, there will be resistance offered. So these resistance is offered 2/3 by veins and 1/3 by arteries. So decreased resistance to half increases venous return and venous return twice and vice versa. So relationship of venous return and resistance is shown in this picture. So increased total peripheral resistance and decreased total peripheral resistance. So coming to the extrinsic mechanisms, that is autonomic neural mechanism. The increase in stroke volume due to increase in myocardial contractility without change in initial muscle length. Okay, so here there is no change in the initial muscle length. So that's why it is called homometric regulatory mechanism. Okay, so this is extrinsic homometric autonomic neural mechanism. So the increase in stroke volume due to increase in myocardial contractility is taking place without any change in the initial muscle length. There is no dependency on the initial muscle length. Okay, so this entirely depends on the sympathetic and parasympathetic activities. Okay, so how do these sympathetic and parasympathetic affect the cardiac output? So the sympathetic stimulation causes positive inotropic effect. Okay, so that is increase in maximal velocity of shortening. That is the cardiac muscle length, velocity of shortening in terms of cardiac muscle. So when the maximal velocity of shortening is present, there will be more force of contraction. So that is positive inotropic effect. And if there is inhibition of sympathetic system, the pumping decreases by 30%. Okay. So you can see the adrenal medulla releasing the sympathetic nerve fibers to adrenal gland, releasing epinephrine and norepinephrine, which acts on the heart, so causing the positive inotropic effect. And the mechanism of action of this sympathetic system activation or stimulation is activation of beta-1 adrenergic receptors on the heart, which causes activation of adenylyl cyclase and which causes increased intracellular cyclic AMP, leading to rapid intake of calcium via protein kinase. Okay, so this, if you remember, we have seen this in signal transduction or mechanism of action of hormones. In that we have this cyclic AMP, intracellular cyclic AMP and protein kinase mechanism. So this is the method or the mechanism through which the sympathetic system activates the heart, that is increasing in the inotropic activity. The ventricle contracts more forcefully and the end diastolic volume will be decreased because there is no time to relax. The contraction is occurring very frequently and forcefully. Okay, so the end diastolic volume will be decreased. And the parasympathetic activity, it is called negative inotropic effect. So this parasympathetic effect is not much pronounced because vagal fibers supplying mainly to atria but not ventricles. So on the ventricles, because the cardiac output is the amount of blood ejected by each ventricle. So the parasympathetic activity is not much seen in this cardiac output. It does not have much regulation on the cardiac output. Only sympathetic activity is main important determinant of cardiac output. And role of heart rate in cardiac output. Okay, so till now we have seen the stroke volume, that is the intrinsic and extrinsic mechanisms. Now heart rate. Okay, so if heart rate increases alone, cardiac output not changes as increased heart rate decreases the diastolic time and end diastolic volume. Okay, so if heart rate alone is increased, the cardiac output does not change much because heart rate, when heart rate increases, what we have seen, it decreases the end diastolic volume. The relaxation time for heart is not present, so diastolic volume decreases. So cardiac output does not change much. So during exercise, increase heart rate along with chronotropic, that is heart rate effect, because the heart rate increases, it increases the cardiac output. So this occurs only during exercise. Okay. And integrated control of cardiac output. So the interaction of Frank-Starling mechanism, this is heterometric, and myocardial contractility. Okay, so these two mechanisms will interact to control the cardiac output. So if you take this graph, okay, ventricular performance on y-axis and on x-axis the end diastolic volume and the stretching of myocardium. So the curve shifts to left when there is increased myocardial contractility. The contractile state of myocardium is represented by this black line. So this E is fetal myocardial depression and X3 is exercise and heart failure, and this is normal at rest, the brown colored one. And the shift to right, that is decreased myocardial contractility, is seen in these conditions. Okay, increased myocardial contractility is normal or sometimes during severe exercise. Okay, so the factors or the reasons for this increased myocardial contractility are sympathetic stimulation, which acts through beta-1 adrenergic receptors, and then catecholamines, epinephrine and norepinephrine, and xanthines, that is caffeine, theophylline, and inhibition of the breakdown of cyclic AMP, and glucagon, which increases the cyclic AMP, and digitalis and other related drugs, which inhibits the effect of sodium potassium ATPase. Okay. So these are the factors which are responsible for the increased myocardial contractility. So this slide you have to remember what are the factors or the reasons for increased myocardial contractility. And same the factors for decreased myocardial contractility. So the opposite of sympathetic, parasympathetic stimulation, and the heart failure, myocardial infarction, hypercapnia, hypoxia, and acidosis, which decrease the cyclic AMP, and the drugs like quinidine, procainamide, and barbiturates. So these will cause decreased myocardial contractility. So that completes the regulation of cardiac output. Now we will see the variations or the conditions which cause increased and decreased cardiac output. So the physiological causes of the increased cardiac output are the age. Okay, in children the cardiac index is more compared to adults, so cardiac output is more, and in females the cardiac output is more, and diurnal variations low in early morning, and environmental temperature, it has direct relation with the cardiac output, and anxiety, excitement, eating, exercise, pregnancy, high altitude, all these have high direct relation. That is, when there is increase of these condition, output increases, and decrease means decrease. And posture change, sitting or standing is more in these positions more cardiac output than lying down due to venous pooling. And pathological causes of for the cardiac output, these are mainly due to low peripheral resistance. Increased cardiac output pathologically is seen in this fever, anemia, hyperthyroidism, beriberi or thiamine, vitamin B1 deficiency, and arteriovenous fistula. And the decreased conditions are CCF, that is congestive cardiac failure, rapid arrhythmias, cardiac shock, incomplete heart block, hemorrhage, and hypothyroidism. So in these conditions, cardiac output decreases. Lastly, small topic, that is cardiac function curves. So these are the graphical analysis of cardiac output, the capacity of ventricles to pump, and relation between the cardiac output and central venous pressure. So for analyzing the cardiac output graphically and the capacity of ventricles to pump, and also to know the relation between cardiac output and central venous pressure. So these cardiac function curves are drawn to know all these things. So these are useful in patients with cardiac failure. Okay, so the normal cardiac function curve will be represented like this. So this is normal, and here the upper one is hypereffective and lower one is hypoeffective. So cardiac output and right atrial pressure. So in hypereffective cardiac function curve, so it is seen when the heart is stimulated with sympathetic nervous system, and one more condition is when the heart is hypertrophied or heart hypertrophy, and other is sympathetic stimulation. And hypoeffective function curve is seen in reduced sympathetic discharge and decreased ventricular compliance, that is seen in myocardial infarction and myocarditis, and insufficient pumping which is due to valvular or septal defects, and reduced ventricular filling and increased load, that is increased venous return. So in all these conditions, there is hypoeffective cardiac function curve. So that's all. I hope you understood. So to summarize, we have seen in today's class the definition of cardiac output and the components of cardiac output, and then regulation, intrinsic and extrinsic mechanisms, and the variations in cardiac output, and lastly cardiac function curves. Okay. So try to read this topic from the textbook because this is very important essay question. Okay. So thank you all.